Welcome to another episode of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot. I'm Mitch. I'm with Margot. What else you got today?
I've got a lot of ideas bouncing around in my head. So why don't we start with an idea from your head? What else you got?
Okay, so I'm going to show a video up here and with a reaction.
It is important to draw wisdom from many different places. Understanding others, the other elements, and the other nations will help you become whole. Fire is the element of power. The people of the Fire Nation have desire and will, and the energy and drive to achieve what they want. Earth is the element of substance. The people of the Earth Kingdom are diverse and strong. They are persistent and enduring. Air is the element of freedom. Air nomads detached themselves from worldly concerns and found peace and freedom. Water is the element of change. The people of the water tribe are capable of adapting to new things.
But it really stems from a TV show of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which at this point I think it's over 20 years old. Which it's a phenomenal show, and it revolves around four elements: earth, air, fire, and water, and the balance between them. And basically, the synopsis of the video that was just shown really comes down to be able to take the strengths of one of the elements and be able to blend it into the strength of another. And I know you've got an avenue you want to go down. I've got a tangent off of my original thought that takes us in a slightly different direction than what you're thinking.
Well, when I first saw that video, I was thinking, isn't this interesting how the universe works? Because I too have been thinking about different personality types over the last week or so. And I just recently watched a great video by, I'm not sure 100% how to say his name, Vin Jiang. I follow him on TikTok, and he has fantastic YouTube channel. Highly recommend. Maybe Mitch can throw up the picture of this, the chart, the main concept from this video I'm referencing. Maybe we can put the link down in the comments. But I loved his video. He is full of so much personality, such a fine-tuned, very well-skilled speaker. He's got a lot of great tips. And so I was thinking about what he shared in that video, but this is not a new concept, because nearly 30 years ago, when I first started having kids, I took a parenting class, and they talked about how if you can understand the personality type of your child, you can be a much more effective parent for that child, because you can't parent all of your children the exact same way because they have different personalities. And so that's when I first learned about the red, the green, the blue, and the yellow. So watching your video from Avatar, I was thinking, first of all, where did they pull their ideas from? I'd be curious to know. Do the Avatar personality types align with these four color personality types? But then also, I told you I had a lot of ideas bounce around in my head. Also, there are so many different personality quizzes out there that we can take. How can we possibly master all the personality types to be able to interact with all of the different complex personalities out there? Can't we just be kind people?
Yeah. So there's a couple different personality tests, and they really boil down to four main archetypes. That it really is a blend of people who are powerful, result-driven, peace, stability, logical structure, and fun connectivity or connection. I'm looking at this chart, and it's just one of those that, with all that, you're able to break people down into different categories. Now, the colors across the different personality tests, they all vary. And so when someone says green in one or blue in another, those two could be the same because someone labeled the colors differently, which is another personality type. So there's colors, there's, I can't remember all of them, but it really just breaks down to they're a way to categorize how generalized people work. One of the things that I thought of years ago when I first started therapy, which it's one of those that everyone is a textbook case with their own flavor. And so that's how personality tests work, is everyone fits in a textbook definition with their own flavor. And what I mean by your own flavor is, yeah, you might be someone who lives in a house inside of a city or out in the middle of nowhere, but that's the textbook definition. Your unique flavor is your house is blue.
Cool. What else you got?
Yeah. So one of the cool things, so I really like the 16 personalities family of things, because it has the four main archetypes of analysts, diplomats, sentinels, and explorers. And those different groups really break down quite a few different approaches to how people approach their personal philosophy of things, how they approach life, how they approach their decision making. Because, like in a previous podcast, we talked about common sense is more cultural sense, and you mix that in with personalities, and people tend to lean towards more of the personality flavor that they were hoping for. And so it's one of those that you have how the person works on the inside, and then you have people, how they communicate on the outside. And so that's one of those really interesting things where most people really break it down to introvert and extrovert. But there's, I believe it's omnivert, which sits in the middle, which means they can shift to either side, which that's a term that I hadn't heard for the first time about 3 years ago. And I'm going, wait, there's a third category? And it really just shows that there's so many different ways to approach stuff. But beyond the introvert and extrovert, when you have your different personality types, you have the ones who communicate with emotion, which I am horrible at. You have the people who communicate with facts. You have the people who communicate with fun and excitement. And you have the people who communicate with power and authority. And you're thinking, well, you fit in a little bit of all those different categories, but it really comes down to what's your blend of that and what is your preferred communication logic. Language. I prefer logic and fact when I communicate. And so it's very hard for me to communicate who are emotional based.
I think this also comes back to the concept of not all things are black and white. Not all things are yes or no. Not all things are one or two, or I guess in binary it would be 0 or 1, right? So I do believe that in all things there is a spectrum. And so I don't think that anybody is 100% red or yellow or green. And at the same time, it hurts my brain to think of all the different personality tests and like you mentioned, 16 different personality types. When it starts getting super complicated like that, my brain just starts to feel muddled. Like I don't have time for you to take a test, me to take a test, and then for us to then discuss our best communication styles. I clearly, when it comes to the red, green, blue, yellow chart, I am clearly a red. I'm driven by power and not that I want power, but I'm driven by results. I want peace and stability. I value logic and structure, and sometimes I have fun and enjoy connecting with people, but I'm very much driven by results, not power, but results. And so if you and I have to take 4 different personality tests and then spend 20 minutes discussing how we can best communicate, that's making me nuts. That feels more like connection. And I see the value in it, but I also am thinking, can we just get to work and get some results going here?
So one of the nice things is with like the 16 personalities, you can actually break it down very quickly where you don't have to remember 16 personalities, because it really comes down to, are they introverted or extroverted? That's your first thing. And then from there, how do they feel towards people? How do they feel towards themselves? And how do they feel towards various actions and purposes and ideas? Because it really comes down to, do they care about others? Do they put themselves out there to advocate or advocate for others, or do they want to shift focus towards them? Do they care about improving others or just improving themselves? And then are they one who approaches things logically, emotionally? And it's just one of those that when you start mixing those together, you start getting your different personalities. And it's not terribly complicated because a lot of these really break down to 4 different categories. And if you understand those 4 different categories and how they blend, you can subdivide it into a million different personalities. But it's, are they majority logic? Are they majority emotional? Are they majority entertainment? Are they power? And you just figure out how that blend works to really get it.
Again, this is from Vin's video. It's just it was basically what you were saying, similar. I shouldn't say basically. It was similar to what you were saying about, are you introverted or extroverted? Logical or emotional? Do you speak deliberately or quickly? And because then by answering those questions, you can see, are you more green or are you more blue? Are you more red or are you more yellow? Does that make sense?
Yep, makes complete sense, and is really personalities aren't complicated. We make them complicated because we muddy it on, do they like chocolate or vanilla? Do they want a recliner or do they want a hard chair? Which, if you really get into it, those are preferences, and some of those preferences are fueled by their personality type, but it really comes down to what they're exposed to. And it doesn't really, and it really just comes down to the simple stuff, and it's all the complicated stuff is where people get mixed up with about, they said this one word has that word to affect their entire personality. Well, if you do it the other way around, their personality dictates the word and the word doesn't dictate the personality.
So how does Avatar play into all of this?
Yeah. So it's in the video, it talks about how you have people who are more fluid with life and they're more flexible to change. You have people who are rigid and who know how to hold their ground and be who they are. You have the people who, in one definition, are avoidant, but they also are free because they can shift through stuff. And then you have the people who are very strong, powerful, and express strength in their things to do. And so there's definitely the elemental side of personalities. One of the things I was actually going to go for with the video is, granted, if you zoom out a little bit to the overall story of Avatar, it's a story about a person who maintains balance in the world. He disappears for a little too long. The balance of the world shifts drastically, and one nation is trying to subjugate the rest of the world. But then the Avatar comes back, restores balance, and that's the overarching story. But one of the characters gets to go through this journey about how they were very stuck in their one mindset on how to manipulate the element that they have. But as they grow through the story, they get to see the benefits of all these other nations and all their other elements. And Uncle Iroh, who's the one primarily speaking in the video, he talks about how you're able to use these different elements for the different strengths. And it's when you blend these elements, it's when you get to get the most out of the elements together or individually. Because at the very end, one of the characters who can only control one element uses the styles of the other elements, which makes his element stronger. Because seriously, it's one of the last scenes in the entire series. It's just absolutely phenomenal, where he's fighting a superior opponent who has mastered their singular element far more than he has. But it comes down to, he knows how to use the advantages of, so his element is fire. He knows how to use the fluid nature of water to shift around and to change and redirect the flow. Uses air to manipulate their attacks and turn them back onto the attacker. And earth, where he's able to stand his ground and divide the attacks. And so it's just one of those that by using the the unique abilities of other elements and adapting them to what you can do. That's where you get your real strengths from, is by using and leveraging the benefits of others.
Well, and being able to acknowledge that other styles have benefits, that your way isn't the only right way, and being able to be adaptable and think on your feet and draw in the strengths of other people's skills.
Yeah, and even in real life, so away from the elements, I've learned that some of the better programmers come from a music background. And you're thinking, music and programming, they're two opposite sides of thinking. You have arts and logic, which is high structure. But uh, music actually does have high structure that people don't realize, and it's more of a fluid flow through their structure. And by taking that flow, you're able to then shift it over to the high structure of programming, and they understand how to make things flow smoothly through logical structure because
But
it's music.
if you think about music composition, it's actually very highly structured. You've got a specific meter, you've got a specific key, and so just because a little black circle appears on a particular line in the music clef, it doesn't mean that that's the precise note, because you have to look at the key. Is it actually a sharp or a flat? And then you have to look at the type of note, quarter note, eighth note, and then you've got your meter. So actually that's an interesting comparison, because music is actually highly structured. It, it but it compares to the written language also, because one thing that I heard repeated over and over in a college English course was, you don't get to break the rules until you've mastered the rules. And otherwise, you're just a poor writer. And the same is true of music. So once you've mastered the keys and the meter, then that's when the fluid part that you were talking about comes into it, because then once you've mastered the basic skills, then you can hold a note a little bit longer, or slide into a particular note. But it's, you need to master those basic skills first, and that's true of people who want to be successful writers with language. You need to understand the basic rules and then choose when to intentionally break them for a specific purpose. Don't break them because you're lazy or ignorant. Break them with intention to draw focus to that specific moment. So I don't know that any of that applies to computer languages, but it just made me think when you were talking about computer language being very structured and music being more fluid. Uh, Interestingly enough, music can be very, very structured. And also, you mentioned like creative minds. Made me also think of like watercoloring and painting. Yes, you can just throw colors on a page, but if you want to become skilled at it, you need to learn art theory, color theory, and learn the specifics of it. And your end result will turn out so much better if you understand the workings of the craft or the skill.
And I really like how you're talking about the fundamentals of the the field or the concept you're working with, because that's actually one of the very underlying tones of Avatar: The Last Airbender is the person who masters the basics and completely masters the basics can outdo anyone who has learned the advanced stuff. Because they may know how to mimic the advanced stuff, but they don't know how it's actually put together. There's another anime series that they hit a very interesting flavor point where they talk about how um, so it's got elves and humans. The elves make fun of humans because humans learn only how to mimic something. They don't learn the reason why magic works a certain way. As elves, they understand the fundamentals of how the magic is built, and so they're able to manipulate it in stronger senses. And there's other animes that there's a single character that only knows one skill, one attack, versus another one who has a large range of attacks. But the one who has mastered their singular skill is the more powerful because they understand how it works. And so when you when you're talking about how to learn the basics and how to break the rules, my thought went to like architecture and engineering, where you look at some buildings and you look at them and go, how is that building still standing? It's because they understand the principles behind what they built. Because I think of some buildings that they just have a large roof that's just hanging off and there's no support underneath it. But when you look at it, the fundamentals of it is it's got a pivot point in the middle and there's more weight on the back side. And so the roof is suspended because of the weight on the back, which someone who mimics that will get it wrong because they don't know how to shift the weight or increase the supports. Instead, they throw more stuff at it when more is the worst answer.
Well, and everything you're talking about also applies to business. Business fascinates me. And one of the truest concepts in business is if you don't master and maintain those basics, if you're only shooting for the huge, giant goals, then your business will fail. So it's great to have an overarching, so like you were talking about mastering the basics before you learn the advanced skills in business, it's great to have that overarching, far reaching vision of what you want the business to achieve and have everybody buy into that big vision. But if you don't have those basic skills, those basic functions mastered and enforced and followed, the business will fail because you need to be upholding those minimum standards, not just have your eyes focused on the huge standards. And that also comes back to, oh, I just had a great thought and it just poofed, went away. Oh, I remember those basic standards versus the overarching things. So there's also a concept in life for, goal setters and goal achievers. You won't ever fall or fail lower than your established systems. So if you think about what you do on a day-to-day basis, even if you're not in business, just personally, if you think about your day-to-day schedule or system, if you've got a schedule or system in place and you're shooting for some big goal, you don't have to worry about failing miserably. You're only going to fail down to the point of your basic systems that are in place. So if you've got your basic schedule, your basic systems mastered, then you won't, in theory, you won't fail below those. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it's your established safety net that as long as you follow it, you're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then anytime your life feels out of balance or work feels out of balance, take a look at your basic systems. Are your basic systems working? Are you getting up at a specific time in the morning? Are you brushing your teeth in the morning? Are you doing your exercise in the morning? Are you eating a healthy breakfast in the morning? Are you getting enough sleep at night? And if you make sure your basic systems are in place, it will allow you to function even better.
Because one of the thoughts that I had while you're talking about that was doctors, and they understand the basics of the human body, but then me with my wandering mind, what really is the basics of the human body, especially when you start talking about medicine, then you start getting into chemistry. Well, how's chemistry and doctors fit together? Well, if you don't understand chemistry, then you can't understand how the various prescriptions and medications work, because it's working at a chemical level, not a medical level. And from there, once you start getting into chemistry, then if you're getting really into it, you start going to anatomy, or atomic level. Sorry, anatomy is the other one. The atomic level stuff. And so it really just comes down to you're able to, the more fundamental of an idea and understanding you have of something, yes, you don't need to understand the exact hard level stuff, but you need to know how it works, because it's one of those that, like, engineers, or specific electrical engineers, you think engineering, okay, they make things that move stuff and do big things, but all electrical engineering is is someone who understands how the atomic level electrons work. And it's one of those that, as you understand the fundamentals of various areas, you're able to manipulate those fundamentals to do bigger and better things. And that's why when you start talking about like circuit boards or large format electrical grids, they're really just understanding how electrons move from point A to point B, where the power originates, and how it's consumed, and everything in between.
Wow. This all started from a video from Avatar.
Yeah. And with just all the talk about fundamentals, going back to the personalities things, where we just really broke it down to there's like, in your case, you showed 3 very specific questions that help you identify where someone's at on a personality scale. It's very simple things. When we start getting into the weeds of stuff, that's where it starts getting complicated. So where I mentioned we're all a textbook case with our own flavor, there's a reason why there's a textbook case for everything, and how we fit into that is very basic. And it's when we start mixing in and I'm wearing a black shirt today, you're wearing a blue shirt today, that's where it's the weeds. And does that really matter? No, because if we break it down to our personalities or more fundamental below that, you can understand the depth of the world at a simpler level.
We can understand the complicated things at a simple level.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, because all rocket science breaks down to is if you push through a smaller hole, what does it do?
Gets stuck.
No, it pushes a rocket into space.
Oh my gosh. So breaking down rocket science. Sometimes I feel like all of these personality quizzes and all of these complicated personality topics feels like rocket science to me, a little bit beyond my realm of capacity. But when we again break it down to the basics, I can grasp the basics. I really can. So it helps me think in terms of the people I want to communicate with effectively and efficiently. It's worth the time to consider what is their personality type and how do they best communicate. Because if I want to be a good leader and make good connections, I need to take the time and make the effort to understand how somebody else communicates and meet them where they're at.
Yeah, and it really comes down to basics. There's a reason why basic communication is so important. Is yes, you can talk about very complex, abstract ideas using very esoteric a plethora of esoteric words to talk about stuff. When in reality, you can just say, "I've got a bunch of simple stuff to communicate. Here's the easy way to do it. And I know you like to communicate in this style, so I'm going to shift. Instead of using these big words, I'm going to use smaller words, and I'm going to use colorful words because that's the way you communicate." And so, again, taking it back to basics is sometimes how you get the biggest rewards.
Cool. All right. Well, that was a fun topic, Mitch. I would encourage everybody to come back next time to hear what plethora of esoteric words we come up with next time on the next podcast. Feel free to follow us, click the like button, click the share button, leave a comment. What personality type are you? Do you believe in personality quizzes? Do you think it helps or not? Let us know in the comments, and have a great week. See ya.